So have you noticed that the dynamics of your family and friends has changed since you lost your spouse? We're going to talk about that in today's episode. So stay tuned. Hi Wid Fam, this is Leo with One Happy Widow. Today we're going to talk about an issue that seems to be a problem with a lot of widows and widowers, people who've lost their spouse or significant other. It definitely was an issue for me, and it seems to be something that a lot of people are dealing with. So on top of your grief, it's the way that the dynamics of your family and your friends change after you lose a spouse. First, we're going to talk about the friend part. You know, you can change your friend, you can change your friend circles. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, but friends sometimes come and go. You may have been in a job situation where you had friends at your job. Let's just remember, I'm just sharing my own experiences here. But at my job, everyone knew me, and they had met my husband, and they knew me as the wife of Dewey, and everything hunky-dory. And then I'm a school teacher, so over the summer he passed away, and then when I came back, everything was really weird because nobody knew how to talk to me, nobody knew what to say to me, and so everything was kind of weird, and they didn't know how to make conversation with me. And a couple people were okay, and they kind of talked to me like normal, but it was very awkward. It was just weird. People wouldn't make eye contact with me in the hallway. It's just really strange stuff. So it was like a little bit of a change in dynamic there. I got a lot of the sympathetic glances. I just felt like an outsider because I don't think anybody else at my job had lost a spouse. So I didn't really have anybody to connect with on that level. For me, as far as the friends thing goes, I was not a real social person. So I didn't have a big social group. My social group was my family. I had lots of kids, had my husband, had family members and things, but I didn't really go out and hang out with girls, or didn't really have a lot of other couple friends. But I've been on Facebook groups, and I've talked to a lot of widows and widowers and discussed, and this seems to be something that comes up a lot, that if you were a couple and you had friends that you do stuff with as couples, suddenly now everybody else is still a couple and you are what they would call single. We don't really, a lot of times you don't like to consider yourself as single, but you're not married anymore, or you don't have your spouse with you anymore. And so the couples, if they ask you to go out with them, then you become the third wheel or the fifth wheel, or you're just this lone person, and everybody else has their little couple group. It changes the dynamic, and then suddenly people don't know what to do with you. And so it's just easier for people to ignore you, not invite you to go anywhere, and then suddenly your group of couples friends, they're still doing their thing, and you're left behind, like just kind of standing there. Hey. And then a lot of times, if you're a married person, you don't really have friends with a lot of single people necessarily. And so if you were a part of a couple, and then you try to become friends with the single people, they kind of look at you like, oh, now you want to be our friends, but only because your husband died and you don't have anybody else anymore. So it's kind of hard to break into a new group of friends that's already been friends forever because they are all single. So we just don't fit in anywhere. That's why we find such camaraderie with our groups, our Facebook groups, or grief share groups, or other widowed groups that we get together with, because we all have something in common. We're all kind of like the misfit.
I'm the official sentry of the island of misfit toys.
We don't fit in anywhere anymore. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the changing in the dynamics of family. This is very hard to generalize because it kind of all changes so much differently with different people. So it depends on how your family dynamics were to begin with, and then it kind of depends on how the people acted. When they say that the death of a person brings out the worst in people, you have no idea how true that is until you're living it. And it is so true. First, I can talk about the family that you have. Again, it's probably something like people don't really know how to act, or people don't know how to talk to you, or things like that. So it might not be as much of an issue with the dynamics of your original family, because they were your family before you got married. They were your family while you were married. They're still your family now. So there's probably not a lot of change in the dynamics. Although I do have a little bit of a funny story. So the next Christmas after he died, my grandmother came to me and she said, "Well, we didn't get you nothing for Christmas this year because we know your husband left you some money and you ain't hurting for nothing." So, so they didn't give me anything for Christmas, like not even a card. They didn't get anything from my kids for Christmas because they thought I was, the rich widow, I guess.
He's on the naughty list.
And it's not about the stuff, so I'm not trying to say, I didn't get anything for Christmas. It's more of the fact that she told me, we didn't get you anything because, you got money from your life insurance, and so obviously you don't need it, and so we got you nothing. You could get somebody a card. You could get my kids something. You could get them something to let them know that we still love you. We're sorry that you're going through this. Here's something to let you know that we love you. And you're still our family. But anyway, that's just how my family is, I guess. And
Some people, they just lose sight of what's important in life. That doesn't mean they can't find their way again, huh? Maybe all they need is just a little Christmas spirit.
the last part is probably the hardest part. So that's going to be the dynamics of the family with the in-laws. Okay, so that and the children, especially if you have grown children, and even more so if you have grown stepchildren. So these would be kids that you would have seen as your children, or you would have raised as your children, or had them as part of your family that belonged to your husband, but then, or your wife. And then when your spouse died, they are not technically related to you anymore. And a lot of times the grown stepchildren will just go their merry way. And, it may have been somebody that you raised since they were a little kid, and then suddenly they don't want anything to do with you anymore. The in-laws, it's a really weird situation, because you have in-laws where they are your in-laws, and even now I think, are they your in-laws, or were they your in-laws? Like, my husband's mom, still alive, is she my mother-in-law? And also, guess what? I'm remarried, so I now have a mother-in-law, my husband's mother, and then I have my late husband's mother, and it would be weird even if we got along, because I'd be thinking, well, do I call her my mother-in-law or what? But we do not get along. We rarely speak because of so many things that happen. But so I don't call her my mother-in-law. I just call her my children's grandmother, and that's about the nicest way that I can put it. People, they don't know how to think of you anymore, because they are grieving the loss of their child. And it's really hard for them to look at you, and every time they look at you, they remember their child that they lost. And it's, it's like that stark reminder that that person is gone. People get so hurt in their grief when they get to that anger stage of grief that they try to place blame for the death on someone else, even if it was an accident. And so I've heard of many people who have been blamed for the death of their spouse by that person's parents. And when there's a suicide, people always want to ask why, how, if that person chose to take their own life, how did they get to that point, where they felt like death was a better alternative than continuing to live? And it's really hard to accept that, and it's really hard to be mad at the person who's gone. It's easier to be mad at the person who's still around. And so sometimes I think that blame gets falsely placed on the person who was with them. And I feel like that's a really harsh, that's a really harsh situation to be in. But I feel like that happens a lot with the surviving spouse of a suicide death. I can't even imagine what you would have to go through if you were in that situation, because you're grieving the loss of your spouse. we all go through a phase where, what could I have done differently? Could I have done something? Could I have gotten home earlier? Could I have called 911? Could I have done more CPR? Could I have changed my plans? There's always a what if. I'm sure that there's already some thoughts going through a person's mind, and when that other family comes in and blames you for the death of their child, then that's just multiple layers of guilt, grief, sadness, loss. It's got to be crushing, because they're not thinking about your pain. They're not thinking about your loss. They're thinking about themselves, and they're trying to find somewhere to put that pain and direct it to, and you are the person that they choose a lot of the times. So, and also when we talk about moving forward, let's say we decide we want to date again, or we want to remarry, we want to open ourselves up to the possibility of meeting someone. That's a really awkward situation, because do you tell them about it? Do you ask them how they feel about it? Do you not say anything about it and figure that they'll find out at some point? And then when they do find out and you didn't tell them about it, then they get upset because they feel like you moved up forward and you didn't check with them, or you didn't let them know, or something. It's really weird. It's just an awkward situation, and it's really tough. I didn't have to worry about that too much with my mother-in-law, my kids' grandmother, because I didn't feel like I owed her anything. I did not owe her any explanations for what I was doing with my life. And when you talk about life insurance, when you talk about inheritances, when you talk about all kinds of things, I've heard so many stories about a couple, someone dies and the surviving spouse is there, and the family of the spouse comes to the house and wants to come in and start putting their fingers and their name tags on everything and saying, I want this, I want that, I want this, and I need you to send me this blah, blah, blah of his, and I need you to send me this, and I need this, and I want to claim this.
And they're loading up on those big ticket items. What shoppers these guys are. Look at them go. Hey, Angela, don't leave anything behind. You need it all.
And I'm thinking, what gives people the right to think that they have any claim over anything that was in your home? Anything that was in your home that belonged to you or your spouse, when your spouse is gone, it's still in your home, that belongs to you. So unless there's a will that shows otherwise and says, I want these specific belongings going to these people, if there's not one, then the decision goes down to the spouse. If you're the surviving spouse, that's your choice to make. You get to decide where they get buried. You get to decide what happens to all their stuff. You get to decide who gets to come, who gets to speak, who gets to go. You get to decide all that stuff. However, a lot of people in the family don't like the fact that you get to decide everything, and they want to have their say, and they want to have their opinion. And a lot of times they're real pushy about it. Some people are not scared to assert themselves into your home, into your life, and tell them how they think things should go, and then think that you're selfish because you want to be the one to make all that decision. It puts us in such a bad situation, but it's a situation we should not even be in to begin with. Because if a family would recognize our position in a person's life, you are the other half of a couple. You are the other half of the head of a family. And I don't care if it's parents, I don't care if it's siblings, I don't care if it's best friends, I don't care if it's brothers or cousins or nephews, or honestly, even if it's children. If you were the spouse and you are still there, it is your place to decide where everything goes. And we're sitting here grieving the loss of our person, and on top of that, we're having to fight with the other members of his family. That's a really crappy situation to be in. And over time, things just devolve into a lot of hard feelings, a lot of jealousy, a lot of anger. They're going through grief too, but they take it out on us a lot of the times. When Dewey was in hospice, he had told me forever that he wanted to be buried in the military cemetery. And that's where he wanted to be, with his brothers in arms. He had told me that even before he knew he was sick. He had always said he wanted to be in that cemetery. So when he got sick and he was in hospice, his mom came to talk to him while I wasn't around, and he was on a lot of drugs, he was on a lot of painkillers, and he got confused really easily because his brain was just fuzzy. She has a double plot that she thought it was gonna be her and her husband, and now her husband's over with his wife and she's got just her and nothing. So she said, she talked to him and she says, well, we'll just let you get buried, you know, in that empty one. She said, I'll be buried next to you, and then Leo can be buried on the other side. So she wanted him to be buried in the middle, and she wanted his wife and his mother to be buried on either side of him. He was listening to her, and I guess he was just agreeing with what she said because it all kind of made sense when she was talking. So she comes out and says, okay, he's gonna be buried in the family plot, you know, and I've got it. I'm gonna sign it over to him and let him have that empty plot. Everything's solved. So then I come back in and he's crying. And he says, I don't know, my mom keeps talking about some burial stuff and I'm real confused and I don't know I don't understand what she's doing. I don't understand what she means. He was so confused about all the flipping and flopping around. All he knew was that I was his wife and he needed help. He needed me to help him, you know, sort out what all this information was. And so when she came out and told me, well, he's going to be buried in the family plot and I'm going to be buried next to him and you're going to be on the other side. And I said, oh no, he's not. And they were like descending upon me. And it was really hard for me to deal with that. And so I basically told him, I know what he wants. He's already told me what he wants and he's getting what he wants. When I talked to him, one-on-one, and I asked him about it and he says, well, I want to be buried in the military cemetery, but I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to be alone. Where are you going to be? And I said, I can still be buried with you. I'll just be buried on top instead of next to you. And he said, oh, good. That's what I want to do. On top of that, when we had the burial, his mom wasn't even there. She had gotten so mad about where we were going to bury him, and she decided not to come. So first of all, is what he wanted. That's the most important part. But second of all, I paid for it. So I don't know why you want to be mad about that, but he is where he is, and he's exactly where he wanted to be, where he's always wanted to be, and that's where he's going to stay.
That's all I have to say about that.
It's kind of situation that, you know, family dynamics kind of gets blown up. Like, throw a grenade in the middle of the entire family, especially the in-law part of the family. When somebody dies, everything just gets, you know, blown to hell, basically. And so if that's happened to you, I am sorry because I can totally relate. It's not right. It's really nasty and selfish of people to do that to you, but unfortunately it's something that does happen. And if you are freshly widowed, the only advice I can tell you is that you cannot control what other people do. All you can control is what you do. You can control how you react to those people, and you can control what decisions that you make. So know what your legal rights are, stand your ground, because you will be picked clean if you allow people to come in and dictate what goes on after your spouse dies. So just remember that you're the spouse, you get to decide, and, you know, stick to your guns. You know better than anybody else what your husband or your wife wanted. And so honor those wishes. Don't let anybody else change your mind about that. Honor their wishes, honor their memory, and do what you think is best. So, did that happen to you? Did you experience something like that with family, friends, or how the dynamics changed? Post a comment below and let us know if that happened to you too. And so that we can all see, you know, that this is kind of a common thread that happens across the board. When somebody dies, the family dynamics just kind of blows up in their face. Every once in a while, you'll hear a great story about how everybody got along and everybody's still really close, but most of the time, it doesn't end up that way. And all that does is complicate our grief even that much more. And it just makes it so difficult. People don't really think about how their actions are going to affect you. They're just thinking about themselves and their own grief. So anyway, like I said, post down below if you've got a story, or if you can relate to this kind of stuff happening. If you got any kind of, oh my gosh, yes, that happened to me too, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss another video. I'm back to trying to do once a week, so you know, I'm doing it. And so don't miss. We'll try to post another one next week, and until then, we will see you next time. Bye.